Hi, everybody. Eve Harrow on Rejuvenation for the Land of Israel Network. It is a beautiful day in Israel. I'm taping this on June 14th, 2018, which happens to be the English date of my moving to Israel exactly 30 years ago. And also, I believe, Flag Day. I'm not really sure. In any event, I'm very busy for the next couple of days, so I'm pre-recording the show. And I saw a show last night, a beautiful play with my husband. And one of the starring roles was an old friend of mine, Marc Zell. Say hello, Marc.
Good afternoon. Are we in the afternoon?
I don't know what we are. It doesn't matter. When they're listening to it, they're listening to it. Some people are jogging. One person wrote to me. She said, you should know that I never clean my bathroom without listening to your show. And she meant it very sweetly. But I was like, okay, some people, when they're in their toilet, they're thinking about me. It's great. Yeah, I don't care. I'm happy. Whatever. I know. And she was like, she knew I would take it the right way. So I took it as a compliment. In any event, the show Soul Doctor, which has been playing on Broadway, I think, since like 2013. And now we're here in Israel.
We had a run in 2013 and it went for about 3 months, and the audiences loved it. But making it on Broadway and managing shows, that's quite another form of art. And so we've had 15 productions of the show. This is our 15th here in Israel, and including Broadway and San Diego and Florida and New Orleans, and all kinds of audiences are just loving it.
Okay, so you say we. Now, you are one of the main actors in the show. The show is about Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, who passed away already, I think, in the 90s, who had 94, who had a tremendous impact on the Jewish world. A prolific musician, very big personality, and I think a lot of people, even when they pray these days, they don't even realize that the tune that they're singing is Carlebach tune, and he spawned like a whole genre of Carlebach type minyanim, Carlebach type of prayer services, and really just a very, very larger than life person. But in the play, you play his father. And but when you say we, so have you been involved? I saw it here in Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. So are you just doing the role when it's here in Jerusalem? Have you been involved when it's gone in different places as well?
Well, I'll tell you, when it was on Broadway and before it got to Broadway, I was the lawyer. That's my profession for the show. And that's how I got to know the producer, Dr. Jeremy Chess, and the creator and current director of the show, Danny Wise. Who I've known for, close to over 20 years. In any case, when it came to Israel, they asked me to help them out, both as a lawyer and whatnot. And I ended up being an executive producer of the show here in Israel, to my amazement. And then, about 4 days before the show was opening, they said, look, we really need to have a father, someone to play the father. Would you audition? So I said, okay. So I auditioned, and they took me there, and I had 4 days to learn the part before it went on.
That's astonishing, because it's not just like a little part where you pop on and say a few lines. Like you're pretty much in the entire play. You learned all that in 4 days?
Yeah, it was quite a challenge, I have to say. It still is a challenge, but it's an amazing part. I mean, I played, as you indicated, Rabbi Naftali Carlebach, Shlomo's father, and the play, which deals with many universal type themes, has as one of its arcs this relationship between Shlomo and his father, which is a kind of motif for generational conflicts between the older generation and the new generation, and how Shlomo Carlebach, as you indicated, revolutionized the world of Jewish music. His father was a resisting force in terms of how Jews relate to other people, and people who are not religious, and people who are not even Jewish. Okay, and that tension, that story is one of the main plot lines of the show, which people enjoy, and also the relationship between Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach and Nina Simone, the great civil rights leader and jazz singer of the 50s and 60s. And she had an important influence on his music, and that relationship is also dealt with in the play, which again appeals to many people of all types.
So the play kind of intimates that maybe they were more than friends. Does anybody know? Is that just kind of poetic license or artistic license for the play?
I don't think the play touches upon that. I don't think it goes beyond that. It's not intended to go beyond that. It's not intended to suggest that it went anything beyond that. And in fact, in real life, I don't think it did. But nevertheless, they had a friendship that as artists and as on a spiritual level, which affected them both.
Well, something that my listeners have heard me say more than once is I think the world is going in the direction of God people and not God people, of all different kinds of religions. Because as you and I know, there's people within our religion who are not so interested in our traditions and in a direct connection with the Creator. And I know that people from all different kinds of religions are feeling the same. And so I think what Shlomo Carlebach was successful at doing, as you said, was really finding the God people everywhere. His main focus was to really get Jews who felt that Judaism had gotten stale and old and get them excited again about prayers and get them excited again about service. So the generational issue that is so fascinating in the play is really one of, he's born in Vienna, he's born before the Holocaust. They get out, but the family is slaughtered by the Nazis. And then there's one very interesting, I guess it's like spoiler alert, but not really, where he's invited to go and sing at some point in Vienna. And that scene with his father, I mean, tell us a little bit what it was like for you playing that scene.
Right, that's a very dramatic scene. The whole play really focuses, opens with the father's visit to the House of Love and Prayer in San Francisco in the 60s, and even hints right from the very first scene about this conflict regarding going back to Vienna. The father is adamantly opposed to returning to Vienna under any circumstances, and Rabbi Shlomo, his son, really feels that this is important in terms of building bridges. The play is about bridge building, by the way, and I will talk about that if we have time. And then the play gives you kind of flashbacks into the history of Shlomo's life and his relationship with the various people that influenced him. And then at the last scene, which we were referring to, Eve, we have this dramatic moment where the father and the son kind of come to resolve this issue in a way that I won't talk about it because I don't want to spoil it, but it's very, very emotional for me as an actor. I must say, when I play it, every time I played it, I'm in tears.
Why in particular? Because my sitting there as a mother touched a lot of nerves for me, and I know that you've got quite a few kids. I know you're a very devoted dad. You're even on there. Your son is one of the other actors.
Right.
So I was looking at you, and I've known you for a long time, and thinking, what is this doing to Marc as a father?
Well, when you act, I'm not a professional actor, but
most of us.
I've acted, for a number of years, and one of the things you do is try to draw upon your own experiences and your own emotions and try and recreating a role. And as you indicate, I have 8 children of my own, and like every father, I've had to deal with situations with my children growing up, which are parallel to what we see in the play, and I drew on that. And when I deal with it, and the issue of the Holocaust, and how we deal with the Holocaust, and how we deal with our children, and so on, all that comes to a head in that last scene, and for me, it brings me to an emotional peak and an abyss in a way, and we resolve it in that last scene, and you have to come and see it to see how we do that.
Yeah. But I think anyone who's seeing it, I mean, especially if you had children, but not only, look, I've had almost exact conversations with my kids. Obviously, I'm not a rabbi and they're not musicians, but love will conquer all, right? Shlomo Carlebach is in the 60s, and he's deep into that idea that if you just sing and you pray and you're happy, the hatred will fall away and everybody will find their common ground. And I've gone through this with more than one of my kids, because we live in a tense society, we live in a tense world where there are bad people and there are enemies. And if it's the naivete of youth, it's such a sweetness that you don't want to disabuse them of it,
No, you don't. But they also have to, they have to confront reality. I mean, especially here in Israel, where we have such a beautiful day in this beautiful city. We're just a short distance from the new U.S. Embassy, right? And all these great things are happening, but around us in this region, there are a lot of bad things that are happening and will continue to happen. That's the way the world is. There's good in the world, there's bad in the world, and you have to be able to deal with both of those things. You need love and you need pragmatism. There's a balance you have to strike. And we as parents try to inculcate some of these ideas into our own children so that they are, one, they are capable of loving, and two, not naive enough to be taken advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also one of the themes that also resonates, I know, for all of us, probably for every Jew and also for a lot of Christians around the world, is how much do you bring tradition forward and how much can you change? If, like, and again, my listeners know this, if there's things about Judaism that I think maybe, especially because we're back in our own country now, they were diaspora things that we needed to keep us alive then, but maybe there are things now that we can ease up on. Is the point to keep everybody in the fold? Is the point to keep everybody happy? Where is that balance? And that is such a preeminent theme in the play, The Father's Old World. Yes. Here's the vestiges of European rabbinic Judaism, and the son is part of a new generation and an American.
He is, but the father is also, in the show, he takes an active role in the civil rights movement in the South at the time. So he's not all that old world. There is a character. He's actually played by my son, who's, very reactionary. Mm-hmm. Okay, and we have an interesting interaction with one another on the stage, which I love. But you're really right to point this. I think in Judaism, particularly, we have been confronting these kinds of issues from the very beginning. I mean, right from the beginning of our faith, at the time of Abraham, all the way to modern days. How do we keep our practices, our ideas, and remain faithful to those ideas, and how do we progress? And that has been a kind of a underlying theme of Jewish experience, and maybe all religions for that matter, from the very earliest times. And that's a healthy tension, all right, in my view. In the 19th century, you had Reform Judaism, you had Conservative Judaism, and they helped bring orthodoxy into a new modality. You had the interesting dynamism between the Hasidim and the opponents of Hasidism and so on, the Pietism. In modern days, you have Shlomo Carlebach's innovations in the musical arena, which touched thousands and thousands of people and continue to do so. You have Chabad, that is how is reaching out to many Jews, disaffected Jews around the world, and bringing them back into the Jewish community. And this is all good. I mean, I think this is important. At the same time, we have to be aware of the fact that sometimes you can go too far, and that is also critical. So it's that tension that we experience as Jews that's focused on in this play. That's what I think it makes it of a universal appeal. The play, one of the productions was in New Orleans, and there were practically no Jews in the audience. And there are many Afro-Americans, and almost all the people were Christians, many evangelical Christians. And they loved the show, okay? And they loved it because they could relate to these ideas. They're not unique to Judaism by any means. They're something that we all experience in all of our different faiths and walks of life.
Yeah, definitely universal themes. And you mentioned a couple minutes ago that the idea behind the play is bridge building. So in what way?
Well, here I want to quote the producer, Jeremy Chess, who indicates that, first of all, Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav indicated that all the world is a bridge, a narrow bridge, right? And in this and Shlomo Carlebach indicated there are 4 bridges. Okay, let's see if I can remember them. Okay, for the interview. One is the bridge we build between ourselves and our fellow man. One is the bridge we build between ourselves as Jews and the Jewish community. One is the bridge that we build between the Jewish people and the rest of the world. And the other final bridge, and that's the most important, is the bridge between each of us and the Almighty. And music is one of the ways that we traverse those bridges, that we connect those bridges. And I think it's a really important thing. And music is really the food of the soul. And we talk about this in the play. I think in one of my lines I say to my son, Shlomo, you have always had one of the purest souls of anybody I've ever known. And that's why Shlomo's medium of communication is primarily musical. So these bridges exist, and we need to cross them. We need to learn how to do that, and that is a timeless challenge, I think, for all people from wherever you come from.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. No. We see that. I see that sometimes people focus on one bridge. I guess it's natural that for some people the bridge to the Almighty is going to be the most important one, and maybe they're not as great with the people around them that they should be. But we know in hindsight what works and what doesn't, right? Like you mentioned, going too far. Right. So sometimes certain reformations, and I'm just using that word without trying to mean anything more than just changes, take people out of the tent, if you will, that expression.
Look, a lot of your audiences are Christians. I mean, Christianity itself is an example of a radical change in Judaism. Started relatively innocently and relatively in a rather contained fashion, but then it developed into this whole new faith, and then itself split. You mentioned Reformation and the time of the 15th, 16th century. So, this is. I mean, human life is like a tree, and it keeps growing. Judaism is at the trunk of that tree, and because we may be the oldest of the three great religions, and we may be the source of much of the three great religions, but we ourselves doesn't mean that we have to be static. We are also growing. The trunk of a tree continues to grow, and I think we have to do that too, and we have been doing that. Okay, and Shlomo Carlebach represents a force of dynamism and progress in a certain sense. Other people might not consider it progress, and that's okay too. All right. The point is that we need to open our hearts to all. Okay, and to show understanding. Sometimes, and here we don't, only hindsight will tell us, sometimes we know that people will go too far. It happened with Shabbatai Tzvi in the 17th century. It happened with the Frankists in Germany. It's happened with other groups now. Some people say that there are groups within the Chabad movement that are going to overboard with the messianic tones that they're sounding. We don't know, but we won't be human beings unless we try. All right, and Judaism has been spawning these offshoots from almost the beginning of historical time, and I think that's one of the great things that we've contributed to the world. All right, things may not have always developed the way we've expected them to, but we've contributed to the growth of humanity. That's the story of the Jewish people, and that's why we have been and will continue to be a light unto the nations.
Yeah, well, I certainly feel that, and here again in the Middle East, the crazy sometimes Middle East. So we're seeing a lot of the problems are between Muslims, the Shias hating the Sunnis. I was just reading what's going on in Yemen, and there's going to be some kind of attack, and so that's an indication of exactly what you said. Within Islam, are they building their bridges to each other? Christianity had lots of wars between each other. Now they may not be thrilled with each other. I talk to different Christians all the time, but they're not killing each other. All right, they have differences of opinion, and sometimes very serious ones, like we do in Judaism as well. But Islam is still a little bit maybe behind the curve there on saying we can be different and not say it's me or you. It can be me and you.
I don't want to give to preach to the Muslims. It is the youngest of the three great religions. Maybe they have a bit more experience to accumulate and to learn from their mistakes, and as we learn from our own. But I'm hopeful about this, and I think that Israel plays such an important role here. I mean, with everything that's gone on in the last, in the modern age, the last 200 years, I mean, the fact that we have this Jewish state, this new Jewish Commonwealth, and all the things that we're doing, even in this very dangerous region in which we live, we are helping to change things, okay? I mean, they don't like us. They don't like us, a lot of them, because, we are different, and we represent a challenge to a lot of their basic values, or so they think. But if they would kind of get beyond that and see what we can accomplish together, I'll tell you a story. May I?
Please.
I travel a lot in the Middle East, and including to Iraq.
I assume you're not putting Soul Doctor on in Baghdad.
Well,
you would if
we have an invitation, we'll be glad to come. Anyway, when I go to Iraq, for example, and I've actually stayed in Sunni and Shia homes. Okay, I've been invited by my hosts, and when I do that, I go as a religious Jew. Okay, a conservative Jew. Of the sort that, first, they don't meet many Jews at all because they've thrown them out over the last 50 years. especially in Iraq. There are hardly any Jews left there at all. But when they meet me, and they are quite taken by the fact that here I believe, as a practicing Jew, in our traditional values, in our mitzvot, we call them commandments, and I abide by the Sabbath and all the dietary laws in those countries, and they've never really seen anything like this. But when I have very strong views about Israel and its place in the world and the Jewish people and the place here in the Middle East, and I'm not afraid to talk to them about that, at least in the privacy of their homes. I don't go on a soapbox, of course. And you know what I see, Eve, is that when I speak to them in these terms, they have great respect for that. That's something that we as Jews, a lot of us, tend to try to compromise these things when we meet others who don't agree with us. Mm-hmm. And we compromise our own values and sell short our own traditions and so on, and our own history. I don't do that, and I think that's the wrong path. I think we have to be proud of who we are. We don't have to be chauvinistic. We don't have to be arrogant, but we can be proud, and we show respect to others, and they will show respect to us in return. I think that's sort of what's going on now in the Middle East on a macro level. As Israel is reaching out to some of the Sunni governments like the Saudis and the Egyptians and the Jordanians and the Gulf states, where we're facing a common threat, the Iranians who have it in store, for not only Israel but these other countries. So so while we not love each other, we are building bridges, right? To go back to that metaphor. So that I think that's important. I think that, and there's hope in that. I believe that we can use this bridge to create other bridges and really make this a better part of the world. If we all got together in this Middle East, God knows what we could achieve together. Okay.
God really does know. Because it's an expression, but he is the one who does have a handle on it.
That is true.
So, we don't have time to go into all the other things that you've done. If my listeners are thinking to themselves, his voice sounds familiar, it's because Marc has also continues to be or was the head of Republicans in Israel and very involved in the campaigns and in the embassy moving to Jerusalem. But I'm not sitting here with you now as a politician. That's another part. And the most interesting people that I meet, and Marc's one of them, have a few things going on, and some of them don't seem at all like they would fit in the same person. So he's got an unbelievable singing voice, and what he says is just great. But I wanted to ask you, just in the few minutes we have remaining, about your castmates.
Yes.
Not all of them, I would imagine, are Jews or Jews living here in Israel. I know some are Jews but not living in Israel, and others aren't. And some of them are clearly professional actors for whom, I don't know if this is their first time in Israel, or for whom it might have been very interesting in taking part in a play that's very much about Judaism and about prayer and about a big man, about rabbis. How was that for them? Can you give us a little bit of insight? And how was it for you working with them?
Well, first of all, for me, it's fantastic. And we have, I have to tell you, representatives of all the three great religions in the cast. In fact, most of the cast are not Jews. Most of them are coming from the United States or Canada. We have our choreographer, and he's really kind of like an associate director as well, Abdurrahim Jackson.
Oh my God, unbelievable.
You saw him dance.
I saw him dance, excuse me, and his shirt was open, forget it. The guy is just totally ripped. We're not going there, but ladies, I'm just telling you. Okay, let's go ahead.
But he's an extraordinary artist and a taskmaster. I mean, he's not been, I had only 4 days to prepare, but he wasn't cutting me any slack. A great human being, a great artist who understands the underlying themes of this show as well as any of the Israeli or Jewish actors. I have to tell you that. And you can see it you saw him perform. You can see it. He talks about it when he was training the ensemble in the various dancing scenes. He talked about the soul and the spirit and the Torah. You have to listen to this. So yeah, it's been amazing. The actors are all extraordinary and all very, very talented and professional, most of them, except for myself and a couple
You did a good job of pretending to be professional. Right, well, you were a professional amateur.
All right, professional amateur, pro-am. Okay. Anyway, but they're great. Many of them have never been to Israel and have had an extraordinary experience. They haven't had a lot of time to see it because we were rehearsing all the time. but they all reports are they're having a wonderful experience here and love the country and want to come back as tourists, not only as actors. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience from A to Z from the very beginning, and working with them. And also, I have to mention the production crew, the directors, the people working behind stage. It's amazing. And of course, our producer, Dr. Jeremy Chess, who's in New York now, back with his family, but an amazing man who had a vision and understood the importance of this show and allowing others to see it and share in its message.
Yeah, I was surprised at how high level the dancing and singing were. It was really and even my husband, who's not the biggest playgoer, he'd rather watch the Dodgers, but we had a really beautiful. Exactly, you're not from LA.
I'm a Washingtonian. Our hockey team just won the Stanley Cup, so we're up. We're pretty ecstatic about that.
Okay, so first of all, where does the play go from here? And are you going now that you've learned the lines? Did you learn the lines just for the few shows that are going to be here in Israel, or are you going abroad with it?
No, I don't think so. I think there are other people who will be certainly more capable of doing the role. I've got a law practice to attend to, and a Republican Party, and a president to defend, which I do on a regular basis here. Willingly and with great great emotion, but I don't think so. I will be involved with the show as I have been, probably as legal counsel or in other roles. There are other people that we're going to be bringing into the show certainly, and the idea is to not only to continue in here in Israel. We have some very exciting plans about that, but also to take it on tour around the world. We've already had invitations to present the play in Europe and other parts of North America, and we're excited about doing that.
If any of you are wondering about the language issues, it wasn't just for English speakers. They had subtitles on screens. Everything was translated, not subtitles. Everything was being translated simultaneously into Hebrew, even though the play itself was in English. And as you said,
some Hebrew in the play too,
and
right?
there was some Hebrew singing as well, exactly. And very impressive how some of the actors who don't speak Hebrew were doing their chets and their reishes.
Maybe just a word about our lead actress, Naya Trisha.
Wow!
Come on. We found her at the last minute, I will tell you, because I won't go into the whole story. We had somebody else that was going to play the role, and she backed out at the last minute. And we found this extraordinary singer, actress from New York. We actually auditioned her on Skype, and you heard her.
Oh, my.
I mean, she is sensational. She is sensational, and she's going places. And it's an honor for me to work with her. She's only 23 years old.
Really?
Yeah, you wouldn't know it. I mean, she's.
I was so taken by her, actually, that I waited in the lobby until she came out. Yeah, until she came out, so that I could tell her that her voice was a gift from God. And for someone to tell you that in Jerusalem really means a lot. And she was really moved. But she's got some set of pipes, that girl. Wow.
She does. She was born in Kenya, raised in southern Florida. And her mother always felt that the best place to have her child educated was in Jewish institutions. So she sent her daughter, Naya, to Jewish schools, to Jewish camps. And she even, when we first met her, she said, listen, I'm Jewish. Well, she almost is. Maybe not halakhically, but she's got that background. And,
got the Jewish soul doctor.
There you go. Fantastic.
Wow, that's really something. So you guys can't see his face, but it's lighting up. This experience I see has been really something very special for you. Really, some kind of a life-changing experience being in this play.
Well, I'm 65 years old. Not too much in my life is remaining, but I have to say, this has been a highlight, and I'm grateful to God that I've had this opportunity to share whatever talent I have, and to be working with these other talented people, and to connect with the audiences and help build those bridges we've been talking about.
What we all want to do, whatever we're doing in our lives, is to leave some kind of legacy. So Shlomo Carlebach, in addition to his music, and again, he was a very large personality and to some degrees a controversial figure as well, because anybody who's going to be that kind of charismatic person is going to have, people. Not everybody's going to love them or have issues with them, and that still remains, and some of that still is following him. But this play and some of the dynamics of his life are also after him. You know, what you've done here with the play is keeping those things that were so important to him, still the father-son relationships, the relationships between Jews and non-Jews within the Jewish world. All of these come out so beautifully in the play. And as you said, music has the ability to transport people in a way that nothing else has. That was part of what happened in the temple,
I have to
too.
say something. In the back seat of our car is my niece, and her name is Marc Zell. She's coming from Northern Virginia. She's a student of William and Mary. And she's soon, with God's help, going to be enrolled in the cantorial program at the Hebrew Union College. Wow. So for her...
So the family genes on the voice, huh?
But what about music? Music is about bridge building, right, Lainey?
You know, I realized, because I do a lot of guiding in Jerusalem and about the temple, the music, the trumpets, we don't know really what music they played. Right. But that music has the ability to just have you fly.
Yeah, it does. And look, Lainey's carrying on that tradition with her cantorial work, and I'm glad that we've had that opportunity with our play too. It's really been a real blessing. And Eve, thank you for letting me talk about this.
Are you kidding? I saw the play last night. I said to my husband, "That's it. I gotta get Marc on the mic, because this is really, first of all, it allowed me to see another side of you. You know, I've seen the political side and a lot of the Israel advocacy side and the legal side, but this, and to see you, and I have to say also to see you up there with your son, was a very moving experience for me.
And Jordan is a real actor. I mean, he's got acting and entertainment in his blood. And I hope that this experience, where he is on an absolute par with all the Broadway professionals, they all say it, will give him an opportunity also to show his talents as we go down the road. It's been great in every respect.
All right. So if you're out there listening to this, and go Google Soul Doctor, see if it's coming to somewhere near you. If it's not, maybe get in touch with some of the producers. Sure. You can get in touch with me, and I'll pass you on to whoever needs to know, because this will touch you in ways that you couldn't even imagine. It's really a beautiful, beautiful play and a beautiful message.
Thank you, Eve, and let me wish you and all of your listeners a happy new month. We're starting a new month in the Hebrew calendar, and coming up into a rather serious period of time. But nevertheless, let us continue and grow. We've had some good news from the Far East this week, or last week, I guess it is by now. And may peace and love and faith and God continue to guide our way.
All those good things. Okay, thank you so much, Marc Zell. Eve Harrow, Rejuvenation for the Land of Israel Network. Thanks to Tabitha and Ben and everybody who makes this show possible. Take care, everybody. Goodbye for now.